Hello everyone and welcome back. Today, I have for you some scary stories to help you relax. So grab your flashlight and follow me into the darkness. There is a strange monster in my town. I won't tell you where. Naturally. But if you live here, you know what I'm talking about. The creature is no secret, though if you're lucky, you'll never see it. I wasn't so lucky. Although that's partly because I was an idiot who didn't listen. I was a transplant from the city, looking for a fresh start. I didn't have a dark past or anything, just some failed dreams I needed to recover from. This place seemed as good as any. The townspeople were friendly, and the scenery looked like it belonged to a painting. Music plays everywhere, and the townspeople often sing as they carry on about their day. When I stumbled across the town, I thought, "Whoa, everyone here is so happy. Maybe I could be happy too." But, to be honest, those weren't the reasons I moved here. I moved here because the cost of living was dirt cheap, and I'd be able to live off of my savings for a few months, even if I couldn't find a job right away. One strange thing I noticed was that the town was sectioned off, oddly enough, by taste in music, I guess, since it was playing non-stop, even in the residential areas, even at 2 in the morning. This was one detail that might have kept me from moving here. I found it hard to sleep in my apartment for the first week. I'd moved into the cheap apartment in the country quarters, not realizing that I'd have to listen to country music 24/7. I asked my neighbors to turn it down, but they said that they couldn't. It was annoying, but no one would budge. Other than that, people was really pleasant to me, though perhaps a touch passive-aggressive, or so I thought at the time. My neighbor from across the hall bought me a housewarming gift. It was a battery-operated CD player and a stack of George Strait CDs. She said it was in case of a power outage. A power outage would be just lovely, I'd replied. I don't really mind country music, but it would be nice if it was quiet sometimes. My neighbor shook her head at me. You'd think so, but you'd best not risk it, my dear. What do you mean? Like I said, this creature is no secret. So, my neighbor told me outright. The monster likes music. If you have it playing, it will leave you alone. Of course, I didn't believe her. Was it some prank? Some way to haze a newcomer? I decided to humor her, though. What monster? Oh, I keep forgetting that not everyone knows. She looked a little embarrassed, drawing her hand to her chin and looking thoughtful as the thought of how she would explain. We call it the Songbird. I've never seen it, mind, but it eats people and makes a real mess of them. For some reason, if you play music, it won't attack, as long as you don't try to attack first, anyway. A few young men found this out the hard way. Right, I sighed, rubbing my scalp in vexation. I'd play along. It's best to get along with your neighbors if you can. So be it. Let's see, it was silly, soon enough anyway. I'd already invested in a pair of earplugs, which I'd started to get used to. I could still hear the music, but at least it was muted. You really should be playing music too, my neighbor told me, worried. Peering past me and into my apartment. The door was still wide open, and the last of my unpacked boxes were stacked by the door. It's okay, I answered. Everyone is playing their music loud enough that I can hear it too, and I haven't had any trouble so far. Not just at home, dear. Everywhere. Or sing. even if you're not very good at it. It's better than nothing." Sure. Thanks." I had no intention of doing any of that. Can you blame me? I didn't know Quaintown, USA was a set to some sort of horror movie, musical. I excused myself after that. I did have that last bit of unpacking to do. I shoved the CD player into the back of the closet somewhere, figuring it could die a slow and dusty death back there. I was a little resentful of my neighbors at that moment. It was true, I didn't mind country music, but it definitely wasn't my favorite, and it was getting old. Time passed noisily for several uneventful months. After a while, things didn't really seem so bad. I'd started turning out the music, and it didn't bother me as much as it had before. I didn't carry music around or sing like my neighbor had suggested, but it seemed like the townspeople all had it covered everywhere I went. Singing and layers upon layers of music playing is so strange, but the people don't seem to mind living this way. I was starting not to mind either, even if I wasn't exactly joining in. Still, I did crave some of that sweet golden silence that I'd taken for granted before moving here. I decided that I'd go camping on Top Hat Hill on the edge of town. The hill was named, as you might have guessed, for its shape, which looked a bit like a top hat from a distance. It was a steep hike and surprisingly large. It served as more as a landmark than a destination for most people, so it seemed like the perfect place to go, without having to spend a ton on gas to get out of town. I packed up a small one-person tent, a ton of snacks, some books, and a couple other things, before making the hike one afternoon. I regretted how heavy my bags were pretty early on, but it was worth it when I realized I couldn't hear anything but my labored breathing. That fact alone gave me the motivation, and I was rewarded by an amazing view of the town and surrounding forests. "Heck yeah!" I shouted to no one in particular, and dumped all my stuff to the ground so I could flop back on the grass and just enjoy the silence. Actual silence. Of course, the peace and quiet was short-lived. About an hour had passed when I noticed a strange sound, like something wet was clicking and scraping. I listened for a moment, but I was so tired from the hike that I didn't bother sitting up just yet. Someone else must have been coming up, perhaps looking to escape the music just as I had. I let out a sharp laugh, realizing that of course I couldn't be the only one who had this brilliant idea. "It sure is beautiful up here, isn't it?" I called out, still not moving. Whoever it was didn't answer, and I finally got curious enough to sit up and see who it was. I hoisted myself into a halfway sitting position, and then stared in confusion at the thing which was still finishing the last stretch of the climb. The first thing I noticed was the long tongue dragging on the ground, rubbed raw and stained with clumps of gravel sticking to it. The tongue was attached to an angular, bony face, with brown feathery patches that seemed to split too, though it just had the one tongue. I thought it didn't have eyes until it caught his head, and I saw that the eyes were spread far apart and located beneath what I assumed were ear holes. This must have been the Songbird, as my neighbor had told me. Aside from the fact that it has some sort of beak, it didn't look like any sort of bird I'd even heard of. I wasn't exactly going to sit there and count, but it had just at least 6 legs that were at least a foot shorter than that dragging, scrapping tongue. I let out a string of curses and didn't even bother grabbing for my backpack. I just started running. I could hear it following me. I knew that I needed to start singing something, but I was so terrified my throat felt like it was closed up, and my brain was completely blanking on any sort of lyrics. What song was it that my neighbor was playing that night? What was it? I could only remember the chorus, but, well, I started belting them out best I could while running clumsily down the hill. I was somewhere between screaming and singing the chorus over and over again, but you know what? It worked. I didn't have to look back to know it did. That rasping tongue was suddenly silent, as the songbird paused and listened to my terrible singing. Going down the hill was easier than getting up, but I still tripped and tumbled down here and there. But I didn't stop screeching those lyrics the whole time. I made it into town, scrapped up and dirty, but alive. You can bet your ass I dug that CD player out of the closet and started looping the first CD I could find. Yeah, it was George effing Strait. So if you ever find yourself in a quaint musical town where everyone is singing and the music always plays, crank up your radio as loud as you can get it and keep on driving. I am not going to be staying here much longer. I just need to save up enough money for a deposit or another apartment somewhere far away. Since I've seen the thing, I don't think I can live with it. But at least I know what to do to protect myself. I don't know why it likes music, but since everyone here is so good about keeping the music going, I figure eventually it'll get hungry enough that it will stop working. I don't want to be around when that happens. My name is Stu, but sometimes people call me other names. My favorite one is Simple. The people who call me that are nicer than the people who call me other stuff. Mommy was one of the nice people. So is my neighbor, Joy. Mommy said being simple was good. She said the good Lord made me simple. So it's okay if there's stuff I don't understand. Joy is 6 years old. He asked how old I am, but I don't know. I used to keep count. I stopped when I ran out of toes. I'm too old for school. That's fine by me. I never liked it because the desks were too small. I guess I'm not old enough to work because no one will give me a job, even though I'm big like men with jobs. Mommy taught me to be nice. She was one of the nice people who called me Simple. She called me other names too, like Sweet Boy and Sugar Muffin. She said my job is to help. Everyone needs help sometimes, she said. My job is to help them. If I didn't always know how, that was okay. The good Lord made me simple, so it's okay if there's stuff I don't understand. Me and Joy played hide and seek. I can count to 10 by using all of my fingers and toes. Joy is good at hiding. He was standing behind the couch, and I couldn't find him. I stood behind the couch too, but he found me right away. I don't know how, but that's okay. The good Lord made me simple, so it's okay if there's stuff I don't understand. One time, our town had a big storm. Next morning, I saw 2 cats playing hide and seek. Ain't it funny, cats playing games too? I really only saw one cat, but he was trying to hide under a big tree, so I figured there was another cat counting to 10 somewhere. My job is to help, so I helped the cat hide better. He could only fit his tail under the tree. Cats ain't very good at hiding, I guess. He was sticking halfway out. He'd get caught for sure. I picked up the tree and set it back down so he was covered up better. It was heavy, but I'm big like the man with jobs. When I was done, you could hardly see him at all. He made a loud noise when I put the limb down. I think he was saying, "Thank you." Yesterday, I helped Joey learn to swim. He said no one ever taught him before. We went out to the creek where the water's nice and cold. It's deep too, perfect for swimming. Joey was scared to swim because no one had taught him. He was scared of the water and wouldn't get in. My job is to help, so I gave him a little push. He sure was bad at swimming. He went straight to the bottom like a rock that's done skipping. He didn't come back. I figured he was tired of swimming and we were playing hide and seek again. I closed my eyes and counted to 10. He was still hiding, so I went to look somewhere else. Today, the policeman came by. He was looking for Joey. That boy sure is good at hiding. I told them not to worry, that we were just playing. I told them he might be at the creek, since I taught him to swim. They came back later and told me I had to go with them. Joey's mama was crying something awful. I guess she saw them leaving. The police say I can't come back for a while. I sat in the back of the car, and we rode all the way to the station where policemen live. They told me to write what happened. They say I did something bad. I told them I'm nice like Mommy was. I told them my job is to help. But they just shook their heads. I don't think they understand. But that's okay. I guess the good Lord made them simple too. This story happened to me yesterday, and it was one of the creepier experiences of my life. I'm something of a night owl. I typically don't fall asleep until 5 or 6 in the morning, and I sleep until 1 or 2 in the afternoon. I'm 28 years old, and I still live with my parents. I know, I'm old and should move out, but I mention this detail because it's relevant to the story. Every morning, my parents leave for work around 7. Sometimes, they leave the door unlocked because I'm home. Like I said, I'm 28, and I'm a large dude. We have 2 small dogs. Anyways, yesterday, I'm sleeping good until I hear my dogs going absolutely ballistic. So I roll over and decide to check my phone. It's around noon, too early for me. So I shrug it off and roll back over. Then, I hear some knocking. It's quiet. I can barely hear it over the dogs barking, but it's there. And it's followed by someone calling out, "Christina? Christina, are you there?" Weird. There's no Christina that lives in our house. I ignore it, hoping this guy's just gonna leave. That's when I hear my dogs get real pissed. They're small. Each is only about 10 pounds, so they're not the best guard dogs in the world, but they're back up a storm whenever they feel threatened. And when I hear them start snarling and snapping, I know something's up. I sit up in bed just in time to hear some footsteps coming down the hall and another loud, "Christina?" right as this weird fucking dude walks into my room. He looks a little disheveled, probably mid-20s, Pacific Islander dude. He's got a shaggy black hair. He's wearing some black shorts and a black t-shirt. I didn't notice what he was wearing on his feet. He just looks at me and says, "Is Christina home?" I'm confused. I'm groggy. I'm in my fucking boxers in bed, and I don't know what to say to this guy. "Nobody named Christina lives here. You have to leave." He just stands there, staring at me. I'm looking for my niece Christina. Is she here? It's at this point that I realize something's really off with this guy. He doesn't smell drunk, but the way he's just standing there, staring at me, is really odd. He was skinny and short, probably half of my weight, so I wasn't super threatened by him. I was mostly just confused and uncomfortable with the situation. I should mention that he was holding a phone in one hand, and his other hand was kind of tucked under his armpit, kind of like when idiots try and hide a weapon during a robbery. But I was pretty sure he was just holding keys. If he wanted to attack me, I was in my fucking bed half naked. He could have. Anyways, he stares at me for about a minute before turning around and leaving. "Christina? Christina, are you here?" As soon as he leaves my room, I'm up and grabbing some clothes, while this dude is just walking around my house, checking all the rooms. About 5 minutes later, he walks out the front door and proceeds down the cul-de-sac. Naturally, I ran around the house locking every door, and then I proceed to call my dad, who tells me to call the sheriff. Again, I hadn't felt threatened. Maybe the dude was just lost and confused. But who walks into a stranger's house and then has a conversation with a shirtless man in his bed? I call the sheriff and file a report. They send out a deputy, who tells me he's gonna take a look around. They tell me to call 911 if the dude comes back. Needless to say, my parents locked the fucking door this morning. So weird dude in my house, I hope you find your knees, but please, let's not meet again. This is my first post on here, so I hope I do a good job of conveying what happened with me. Fingers are still shaking while typing this. So let me give you a quick intro about my life. I'm a grad student at a university in Northern England, but in my spare time I love to travel and explore new places with my dog Rocket, the best German Shepherd you'll see. So one afternoon last week, I was venturing into the woods in the upper north. The forests are spectacular here, so much so that at some places the trees go up so high it's difficult to see the sky. Normally, I just come out there with Rocket, smoke a blunt or two, admire the silence, and come back. This time was different. Very, very different. So I entered the woods, Rocket sniffing along. Suddenly, I hear some noises ahead of me, like rhythmic whispers, much like some people talking, but in a weird way, controlled manner, almost like a girl with crests and throats. I honestly thought it was some hobos, because those blocks sometimes cap around there. But Rocket suddenly stops, tail up, and starts growling slowly, and then starts whimpering. Mind you, this is a dog that never gets scared, even when I do. I shush him and slowly sneak forwards. We keep going inside the forest core, the trees growing bigger and the sun's rays getting thinner. We reach a clearing and hear water. Now, I'm not an expert in terrains, but there certainly weren't any lakes anywhere near the forest. I finally figure out the source of the noise. I see a group of people huddled down in a circle, chanting something in some weird language. It sounded like a mixture of Latin and some other language I've never heard of. I squinted to see what it was, and what I saw sent a shiver down my bloody spine. It was a boy probably 13 or 14 years of age, crying silently as those sick dudes whispered some sort of mantra around him. I could make out some sort of entrails piled up around him, and the men and women were throwing some liquid on them. At this point, my hands were shaking violently. Beside me, Rocket was shivering as well. Somehow I took out my phone trying to click a picture, but as I am doing so, it fell down and made a thick thwack as it hit the ground. A couple of people in the group turned, and I was horrified to see that they all wore masks of some kind. As far as I can remember, those masks looked nothing like I've ever seen. The closest was probably Dante's death mask I had seen in Florence, but these masks had some sort of horns. I should have run for my life, but sense took over me. If I ran with Rocket, it'd be too much of a ruckus, and they'd surely catch us. So, as silently as I could, I snuffled away from the bushes, away from them. I pulled Rocket's leash, and he thankfully made almost zero noise as he followed me back. I had gone back almost a mile, when Rocket, for no good reason, let out a big bark. I looked back in horror as I heard footsteps many of them, towards us. I ran like I've never run before, rocket racing at my side. I finally reached the edge of the forest towards my car, motioned to Rocket to get inside and put the accelerator on. While I sped away, I could thinly make out a group of people speeding out from the forest and looking at the car. Even through my rear view mirror, the sight of those masks staring down at me gave me the creeps. Even the image of that is making my hands shake as I type this. I don't know whether they got my license plate. I'm far away from that place now, but even the thought of them figuring out who I am scares me. I'll try to make some investigations about this. Hopefully it bears some fruit. I'll keep you lot posted whatever happens. Most importantly, if you hear rhythmic whispers from the woods, wherever you are, don't fucking go. Hey there, and thank you so much for listening. If you like this video, please leave a thumbs up. And if you like my videos and want to see more, subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to visit my shop if you want to buy this print and other prints and originals. Take care, and I will see you all in my next video.